Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I know it's end of the day, rowdy crowd. Hopefully, we'll get you motivated. Let me make sure we have the presentation. So my name is Rusmir. Last name is actually Music. You wouldn't necessarily know, so that's fine. And I was born and raised in Bosnia, so in my language, Music has nothing to do with the word music. It looks very different, also in Cyrillic, in the end. And but I have been working with IFC for many, many years as a climate finance expert. In the very early days of IFC, even setting up this program, I was the green buildings lead globally for business development, so I live and breathe green buildings still, and I'm now working as a global cooling lead for IFC Sustainable Cooling Initiative, which is our newest program. So if you're not familiar with IFC, we are the private sector arm of the World Bank. So that means that we do commercial lending to projects around the world. And we do this, it's not a grant-making institution, it is a loan-making institution, but IFC looks to do other things, so we combine technical advice with our loans or equity. Sometimes we take longer tenor in our projects so that, it helps you sort of repay your interest, and we do this in two different ways. So IFC does direct investments. Somebody has their phone here, I'm not sure who left their phone behind. Is this yours? It's okay. Actually, if I speak into this, yeah, maybe I'll walk around. Can you hear me now? I'm better walking around. I think it will get you all motivated. So IFC does investments in two different ways. We do direct investments, and so that means working with private sector firms. And we also do investments through financial institutions. So I know some of you came up to talk to me and you were interested in quite small projects, maybe $1 million USD, $5 million USD. For our direct investments, we are looking for larger projects, probably in the ballpark of 50 million USD. That will be our direct investment in manufacturing institutions. And we have some colleagues from our financial markets, Ekta, she's a housing specialist, but she can talk a little bit about it more. We actually do investments also into local banks. So one of the things that we're trying to do in the Indian ecosystem is to let the banks understand that there is a demand for cooling products for small and medium enterprises, something that we can then give credit lines to banks, which they can then on-lend to you. So that's a much easier way for IFC to reach small and medium enterprises, or even through microfinance, let's say going all the way to like small farmers in the end. So remember, direct investments and also through financial institutions. I don't think I need to talk a lot about this and why there's a cooling emergency, but one of the terms that we've been using a lot, it's this term heatflation, that the world is really facing increased temperatures. We visited a building today and they said the outside temperature of the walls was 62 Celsius. And I was shaking like this and they were looking at me like, I really cannot comprehend that type of a temperature and what it is that you need to do to get yourself to cool down. Very soon, cooling is going to really be considered almost a human right. So we have to address it. One of the things that you'll see what IFC does really well with our partners in the World Bank is we try to put all of this into investment opportunity language. So while there are losses and other things that are happening, we're trying to kind of reframe all of this from a gap or a need to point out to both firms and to our partners in the financial markets that this is an investment opportunity. And the real estate and the buildings is probably the biggest investment opportunity that we see in India. You may have heard the statistics kind of thrown around. Half of India that you'll see by 2050 has not been built yet. The footprint of this country when it comes to real estate will in fact double. And that leads to staggering numbers like trillions of dollars that can be invested into green buildings, and it will let you then access international green finance. All of this has led us to launch IFC Sustainable Cooling Initiative, and this is what we call a 5x5 plan. So we're addressing 5 focus sectors. So everything from district cooling. Today, obviously, we're talking about cooling for buildings. We're going to talk about manufacturing, agribusiness, and cold chains. So some of you producers of equipment might be in the kind of that second to last category. If we have developers, you might fall under the cooling for green buildings. And then we're really interested in this sort of aspect of cooling as a service. We are deploying a lot of technical assistance along with more of this awareness building, but those will be linked to companies that are going to be our investment clients. So some technical assistance like the EDGE program, which you'll hear about in just a little bit, that's really available to everybody. That's a market creation exercise. We have UNEP in the room. UNEP will be doing a lot of work around passive cooling. So the technical assistance and education is going to be open to everyone. IFC will have additional forms of help, and these will be available to those who become our investment clients. This might, again, be something that you would directly benefit from if you're a larger manufacturer or a larger developer, but it might be something that we pass on through the banks where you get your financing. And what can help us with financial institutions is showcasing to the banks that there is a market for this. The banks are ultimately very conservative. They don't want to take IFC's money if they don't think that there is, that they can distribute it. So one of the ways that you can help us is through the association or even in your own one-on-one, really showcase to these banks that if they take IFC's financing and our technical assistance, you will readily take it because the market for this actually in India is quite large, and it's something that we can do quite a lot more. There's innovation. There are many things that are happening that can really change the course of India moving forward. We are building our experience on the back or on the really show in numbers where some of these projects have happened and where the efficiencies ultimately have taken place. I'll switch now to green buildings. So remember, we have 5 different sectors that we're working with, and buildings is one of those particular areas. And today's focus will be around finance and around buildings. And so IFC has been running our green buildings program for quite a while, and we look at things like passive cooling and cooling in general in the context of green buildings, and we're now also talking about resilient buildings. So we want the buildings to not only have a lowered utility bill, we also want to make sure that they are ultimately more prepared for rains, for flooding, for fires. Unfortunately, our hotel, for example, Marriott, it's flooding everywhere. And all of us have been talking about, are the rains here just that much more intense? And the client that we talked to said yes. The amount of rain that falls in Jaipur may be the same, but it is no longer spread over, let's say, 7 days. It just comes down as one huge storm that hits you. And those are some of the models that we've known about in climate science, that hotter air holds more water, so it's able to kind of have it up in the air for a longer period of time, but then when it falls down, as they say, it's like God Almighty is taking a bucket and pouring on you. So all of these things we have as a way to help our buildings be better. We do this through public policy. We do this through working directly with developers. Obviously, I talked a lot about the financial institutions, and we'll hear about this later. And we have 2 different systems, EDGE certification and Building Resilience Index, that are going to help us out get there. One of the reasons that investors or firms like working with IFC is that bridge between technical and green finance. And the chair, or earlier the moderator on the session said, we've had a lot of technical sessions and not a finance session. In the international green markets, we have worked with many clients that have done innovative green finance for green buildings. So for example, in Kenya, the first green bond was not done by a bank. It was actually done by a developer of green student housing. They used EDGE. They realized that it was something that they could really achieve quite easily, that it was fairly simple and robust. And they actually launched a green bond first on the Nairobi Stock Exchange and then on the London Stock Exchange. They got to ring the bell at London Stock Exchange and had done a green bond that attracted all kinds of different investors for them that they would have never had access to if they had just done sort of a normal, plain vanilla finance. The green finance bought them access into these international markets. These are some of the things that are available to you here in India, and IFC always does a really good job of bridging the kind of that bridge between technical and financial details. And what you'll see, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the systems like Edge, you'll be able to understand what is my upfront cost, what is my utility cost saving, how will I sell this if I'm selling, let's say, on the residential client, what is my payback period? So there's always a focus on the finance as much as it is on the technical details. We have had a really strong track record in investing. You can see, and these are actually last year's numbers, it's almost 12 billion. Green buildings are actually the second largest sector for climate for IFC. The first is renewable energy. And renewable energy is much bigger. You can think of like a big power plant. Green buildings, we have to do a lot more to catch up, and it's still done really well. And you can see we do quite a lot through financial institutions, and we've done direct investments in other places as well. An example of green finance instruments that we've done in many parts of the world. So I've talked a lot about green bonds. This is something that goes on the capital markets. It is done either through banks, but large corporates can also do this. We have green loans, so they get classified and talked as such. These green loans have now merged into, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, what's called the sustainable linked finance, where investors are willing to give you an interest rate step down if you reach certain KPIs. We've done REITs, retail, we've done green mortgages. Here in India, it's a world's pioneer in green self-built homes, that we can even provide finance to self-built homes that are ultimately certified as green and audited through that process. And IFC does everything also from airports to ports. We always say if it has 4 walls and a roof, we can certify it and we can probably invest in it. And this is an example, and hopefully there it is, the motion works. These are some of, this was done I think like last year, of all the buildings that have been certified just in the country of Colombia as green. I worked on Colombia to help them with their business plan many years ago. They had like 1 home certified, it was a tall residential building, and they had a few hotels, and that was it. Since then, over 20%, I think now we're at 25% of all new construction in Colombia is now being certified as green. And this is a direct result of a financing program that was flowing through the local financial institutions, Bancolombia and Davivienda, and also lots of education and partnership with the Chamber of Construction. So I think I'll leave you at that. I am happy, I come from DC, I get to tell these wonderful stories, but the folks that you'll meet and the panel are the real hard workers who are sitting here in India and doing all of that hard work. So I'll let them answer some of your nice questions. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful speech. Can I invite you, Ashu Gupta, on the stage to felicitate our keynote speaker? Can we have the applause coming in? Mr. Ashu Gupta, felicitating Rusmaid Mosik from IFC. Moving forward, we are going to have a panel discussion now on the topic green financing in cooling industry and buildings. And to take control of the entire session, I have to call upon the stage the session chair. And now here comes the another Kolkata Connect. So the session chair is Mr. Amitabh Hasur. To briefly introduce Mr. Soor, he's a presidential member of ISHRE. He's a convener RefCol 2024, which is going to be held at Kolkata. President-elect ASHRE East India Chapter, Vice President RATA Regional Committee. Mr. Soor, Can I request you kindly to come up on the dais and take control of the stage? All yours, sir.
Thank you, Nilanjana. Can I have this mic? I'm more comfortable with that. Good evening. I think it's pretty late. Nilanjana keeps pressing me that you have to complete it faster, but I don't know why, because everyone deserves their own time. So, and I'm happy to see that we have an audience, so I would not like to finish it on time. I'll rather like to extend it, because this is an interesting topic. Right. So, we know that we've heard a lot about decarbonization since yesterday afternoon, and how important it is. We have all understood it. What are the steps that we need to take is something which we are now pretty clear of, and I'm sure all the stakeholders, industry, users, will all move forward to that. But we all know to move forward to that, we need money, we need finance. And how will that finance come? In what way? Is something which we need to understand also, because that's also is important, and that's where comes this panel discussion, where I think Rusmir has enlightened us with his presentation, where he has already given an insight onto how IFC, what programs IFC is running. But I would also like to invite Atif on stage and steer this panel. Briefly, let me introduce Atif to you. Atif Said leads IFC Green Building Program in South Asia, focusing on resource-efficient buildings through investments, market standards, and government policies. He heads the EDGE Green Building Certification Program. We have heard what EDGE is about from Rusmir, and has supported green building codes for 7 governments, ensuring compliance for over 18 million square meter of built space. As a trained architect and sustainability expert, Atif has consulted on building efficiency in over 6 countries, advising governments, developers, and designers. Who else would have been a better person to steer this panel discussion? So let's hear from Atif and his panel, who he will introduce to you, that what is green financing all about. We know about financing. We have all built industries and businesses, and we have gone to the market to get financing. But how is green financing different? What are the compliances? What are the responsibilities for this? Let us get into the details of it, and let's, Atif steer this panel discussion to show us and give us insights on that. So I'm sure this will be interesting. Atif, all yours.
Thank you, Amitabh ji, and good afternoon, everyone. Please have a seat. It's an honor to be here and to be talking to professionals like yourselves. We have a very diverse group here in our panel, comprising of people from the investment industry, but also from the professional industry, from the developer industry, and from the consulting industry. So you'll get a wide range of opinions today, talking about green buildings, cooling, and finance from their different perspectives. So we would like to get many questions at the end. So please keep noting down your questions as the discussion happens, and we'll take all of them at the end. So let's start with inviting our other panelists. So if we can have the screen change.
Can we have the the slides for the panelists, please?
First of all, like to invite Mr. G.C. Modgill, or popularly known as Modgill Sahab. Thank you, Mr. Modgill. I think most of you know Mr. Modgill very well, and I'll ask everyone to briefly introduce themselves. Then we have Mr. Anubhav Saxena from Mindspace REIT. Welcome, Anubhav. Please. Thank you. And I don't think we have Mr. Mehul Jain today. He could not travel to Jaipur, unfortunately. The next one is Ekta Maheshwari from IFC as well. Thank you, Ekta. Welcome. And Mr. Anurag Bajpai, who's representing Green Tree Global. Welcome, Anurag. Thank you. And Mr. Rakesh Shejwal from UNEP, coming all the way from Paris. Thank you, Rakesh. Please have a seat. So let me maybe pass the mic, and if you could take your mic and very briefly, Mr. Modgill, if you could very briefly introduce yourself, and then the rest of the team as well.
Nobody knows. They have read. I think instead of that, we should take that time into just
All right.
question answers.
Okay, let's do
Maybe
that.
if that
Let's do
is
that.
right with everybody.
Okay.
Because
And if you feel like you need to introduce, you can introduce yourself during your answer. So thanks. So I think as a community, what we are looking at now is hedging ourselves against a future, against a somewhat uncertain future where we are expecting a lot of changes. Some of them are already happening now. So we are seeing changes in regulations, the codes, the bylaws, the policies, the tariffs, they're changing. We are also seeing changes in investor preferences. Climate finance, like Rusmer mentioned, that's something that's new, relatively new, I would say, and it's changing fast. Changes in customer preferences, like people who buy, who rent, who lease our buildings, their preferences are changing, and I'm sure many of you are already seeing that. And of course, changes in climate. As we've seen in many parts of India and the world recently, the extremes have become more extreme. So are we prepared for that future? And what role does finance play in protecting ourselves from the extremities of that future, those major hazards that we're facing? So we'll start with Mr. Modgill. Want to set a little bit of the background on what we're talking about here. If you could just give a quick update based on your experience, what is the level of awareness on the whole decarbonization targets that we have been talking about as an industry here? Outside this group, outside this room, do your clients talk about decarbonization? Are they aware of decarbonization? How ready are they to adopt decarbonization?
zero carbon are the buzzwords. But even if we talk about carbon neutrality or zero carbon, we should understand that there are scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions, which we talk about. Now, as far as awareness goes, scope 1 and 2 to some extent, that awareness is there through green buildings and various other certification programs, which we are having in the available are there, and various programs are available and doing very good job there. But those are only certain projections, and based on that, the efforts are going. Then comes the operational side, where we are trying to build efficiency, and a lot of things are again happening there, in the sense that various technical programs to just upgrade the skill level of the operators, as well as certain other kind of efficiency building measures in terms of IoT or BMS or whatever we call, which can also bring operational efficiency, are already bringing operational efficiency, are also coming into play. But scope 3 is a bit difficult, and that is a bit difficult to control. And there, I think some awareness is very low as yet, to be very frank. In the general public, I'm talking about you asked me the question, general audience. So I'm giving the perspective of that. Whenever we talk about, because government has also given certain incentives for green buildings, certain area incentives, certain other incentives, which is very good. And there are various programs which are certifying the materials as green materials or low carbon materials, and various programs which also help in bringing those materials up, those also are available and getting certain kind of awareness through various programs. But we need to really concentrate on scope 3, which is main. And as you know, Government of India has established carbon neutrality to be by 2070. That is the objective they have laid. So even Terry has come out with a report which lays out the roadmap in 2030 for net zero buildings. So efforts are going on. There are tremendous efforts. But when it comes to actual this thing, it is really a job where we have to go and convince the audience and make him understand, because various myths are still there that if a building has to be efficient, or if a building is to be net zero, or if a building has to be carbon neutral, then it is going to be a very big kind of investment. So they say if the capital cost is more, then obviously, the builder and developer has got a foot back to go. He says, no, I'm not interested in that. So I will restrict myself here only because I'm...
Sure. One quick follow-up on that. How do you compare the commercial versus the residential, considering that residential is the biggest bulk of construction that's going to happen in India in the next few decades? How ready is the commercial or is the residential sector?
That's a very good question and apt one for today's case. Because if we look into, today we have almost 10% of the Indian public which has got access to air conditioning. And we have, if we have to be third largest economy, then obviously we have to grow and the GDP grows. All of us know that the cooling also is one of the aspect which is going to grow in a big way. Now, in the residential sector, although we have laid various programs with regard to leveling of equipments, leveling of air conditioning, split units or whatever, but the issue comes is that till the time we take the whole approach, all the awareness is on the residential sector is low, and even to the extent that I personally sometimes try to go to stores and Chroma or Reliance or whichever one is there, and ask for that which I want to buy a split AC or this. So the guy there, the salesman there is not interested in selling me the best one or the most energy efficient. Why? Because he is apprehensive whether I should not go out. So he is interested in selling because he has given a target by his owners, employers. So he is interested in selling that whatever way he can sell a 3-star, he should be able to sell that. So that is where some kind of, we have to build certain kind of measures which can bring that awareness, or certain kinds of incentives which need to be done, because in the residential sector, people do not know how this is affecting, and this is a big energy guzzler because all these equipments always run on part load. They never go on full load condition, and there we suffer a big setback in terms of energy consumption. As well as for the residential, I think we need to look in a big way. We were downstairs in a session whereby Adanis were talking about that residential also they are going with district cooling. That's a big achievement if that is done. But if we really look at, there are possible ways that we can have certain kind of water cooled air conditioners or certain kinds of other preventive and predictive maintenance kind of issues, which maybe we can discuss later. But what I'm trying to say is that we need to bring that awareness at a large level still, and that is not.
Sure. And we cannot ignore the residential sector.
That obviously.
Definitely. Thanks. Anurag, considering your strong consulting background and again the diversity of projects you worked on, could you give us a sense of what kind of challenges your clients are mentioning to you what's stopping them from going for higher level of efficiencies or to the level of decarbonization? Are those technical challenges? Are those financing challenges? Are those behavioral challenges?
Thank you so much, Atif. Thank you, Aishray, for this opportunity. So I think I'll just use the flow which Madhgil sir has established with respect to residential and commercial, and would like to elaborate the technical and the consumer behavior perspectives as well. So, for example, when we look at the residential and the technical aspects, we really look at the moving from maybe 1 star to 3 star.
Can you change the mic? It's
So, when we look at the residential market, particularly for the consumer behavior perspective on the technical aspects, so moving from 1 star to 3 star, from 3 star to 5 star, I think that is where the cost is the component. And then when we look at the maybe commercial buildings, the bigger set of maybe the houses or the group housing projects where we look at the maybe commercial chillers as a established cooling mechanism, we really look at the maybe the performance contracting issues as well. So when I say is as a technical aspects, which means that most of the cases when we look at the EPC contracting works, we look at the handing over stage as and then most of the cases the defect liability period or the performance contracting period is missing post the handing over stage as well. And that is something which we need to look at in terms of how to maybe mitigate such challenges. And most of the cases when we look at the centralized air conditioning system, this is something which is there as a challenge for the technical perspective. For the consumer behavior perspective, I think for the residential, I mentioned cost is always an issue. People in general in India they are cost sensitive. For the commercial building perspective, I think for the developer, it's always the split incentive. They need to look at whether they are building for themselves, and the lease model is there so that they'll be basically facing the operational cost as a component, or is it something that they are building the property to sell it off? I'll also give an example here. So we were involved in one of the projects and where the project size was almost like 20 lakh square feet. It's a 2 million square feet as a built-up area. And it was a retail plaza. So it means that you have a small shops starting from 200 square feet and goes up to 800 square feet. And in the entire 2 million square feet, the architect or the developer, they proposed the water-cooled DX unit. And you can imagine how much energy that the whole development will consume once you have the DX system. Certainly, we understand that the consumer will be installing at his cost or her cost, and that is where the developer will go away with maybe the cooling system installation, and that's it. So that is where we see the split incentive in terms of for them, the initial cost is always the deterrent if they really do not look at the running the commercial setup themselves. So I think these are the two aspects that we see. Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you. So I think a lot of focus on operational aspects is also needed, plus behavioral changes. So changing people's mindset, that obviously is a huge task by itself. Now coming to the finance part, I want to get a very quick response from Rusmir and Rakesh, since you're both representing the finance committee here. Approximately, what is the volume of financing that's available for climate projects right now globally, not just from your institutions, but globally? Or conversely, you can say, what is the need? What is the demand for climate financing right now? Any numbers that you can share with us?
Last I checked, literally it's trillions of dollars, because every single European and other pension institution has committed to make their finance not only going into just climate, which is about 20% efficiency, but to net zero. I mean, there's lots of commitments on that end. I have said, I think at the yesterday's session, pre-conclave, when I started working, we had an issue of money in. We now have an issue of money out. There's lots of money that has committed to projects. They do not yet have those projects to send their money out. And so working with IFC, for example, on green building certification ensures that you position your project in a way that can then access that international green finance to let the money flow down to you. The need is still even greater, but the funds have been committed, and the Paris Agreement really made that change between the before and the after.
Raki?
I mean, just to add on to it, it's trillions of dollars per sector per year till 2030. That's the gap we're talking about. So when you see, even at COP, these last 2-3 COPs that you're seeing 100 billion committed, that's just a drop in the ocean. So we need much more finance if we are to reach 2030 targets.
Wonderful. So I think that gives us a perspective. So even if we assume $1 trillion per year and let's say 20% of that is coming to India, you're talking about $200 billion. That's not small change. So when people say money for climate projects is not there, I think those numbers kind of give us the right perspectives. Thanks for sharing. Anubhav, representing Mindspace, I think you have recently got some climate finance for your project for the Mindspace REIT. Could you share your experience as a large portfolio owner of commercial buildings? How did you manage to get this funding, and what role did data play in this? Data in the sense of operations of building, the energy use, the GHG emissions, the cost, etc. What role did data play or data transparency play in getting access to this climate finance?
Data transparency plays a very much important role as it increases the trust among the investors as well as the trust among the internal employees as well. Let me give you an example like before even the ESG reports, organizations were reluctant to share their data. They were not very keen to share their consumption data. And now even if they are sharing the data, they are sharing the data in terms of overall data like for organization. Like if I'm just giving you an example, I'm having a GHG emissions of 55 tons CO2e. It won't make any sense for a normal people or any external stakeholder how to benchmark this data, whether the data is on the higher side or lower side. And that is why it's not making any sense. So not a correct time that even though the developers, when they are disclosing those data, they should be very transparent about themselves. They should not confuse the external stakeholder what the data is actually all about. Once they start showing the data, it's maybe possible the data is not always in to be on the positive side. Sometimes the data will be high. That will be the correct thing because it will give you the correct picture of that organization as well as the internal employees also where they want to go, where the current status is. Currently in all the most of the Indian developers are not very strong in having the data or all become net zero. So it's okay that if they are on the higher side, they have to accept that. So it's the right time they should have the data at the building level. Like, so even the ton CO2 is okay for the organization level, GHG emission, but start having the data at the building level. What is the energy per square feet at building level, water consumption per building level, same way waste consumption per building level, so that it's easy for an investor also to benchmark the data with respect to the peers group, as well as for external stakeholders to understand the clear insights of the organization. Also, it will give the better confidence to the internal employees to understand their organization consumption patterns towards this energy, waste and water.
Thanks. Just to follow up on that, validity of the data is also very important. How can people trust the data that, let's say, a portfolio like yourselves is generating and passing on to the investor? What kind of validity or verification process do you follow? Very briefly.
So we, whenever any organization is actually putting the data on the public domain, the first step is to put the data on the public domain through their ESG reports or
a lot of it is going to go through commercial ways. What SLF is doing, it stands for Sustainable Linked Finance, are institutions I think it's starting more with the development finance institutions, so think ADB, IFC, World Bank, but I think slowly happening in the commercial ones. Again, there's money in, money out. We ourselves have committed to getting a certain percentage, and that's 50% of all our finance, and we're really kind of desperate to find good projects. So we're willing to reward them, to say, if you reach these KPIs, we'll do an interest rate step down for you. It might not have to be big, maybe it's a small, 0.5% step down. Sometimes we do it out of our own budget. Sometimes we go to some of our donor finance, and so that's what's called blended finance. There's a donor concessional finance that helps out. The latter case is IFC's, it's called the MAGIC program, which is here in India. We're doing a lot of that self-built housing that Ekta will talk about in this particular way. What's important to know about SLF is that if you don't reach that particular KPI that you promised, then your interest rate goes up, or there's some sort of a fee or a penalty. Because for the investors, the returns on the green side are just as important as the returns on the financial side. If you think of money as green from the United States, we're now looking at both things almost the same way. We want, and it doesn't always have to be green, it could be social, gender, reaching population, but that's what SLF is. I do think that the world will sort of head that way, at least for a while, but very soon, and even maybe for institutions like IFC, we're going to start asking you, well, what is your, you're willing to reward you maybe for this one project, but what else are you doing? We are not going to reward you for one nice project if 90% of what you're doing is still exposed to fossil fuels. You have to change everything that you're doing. We're calling that Paris Agreement alignment. So we will be more and more, and not just us, but the other multilateral institutions, looking for companies that are really committed to that change all the way to net zero in their entire operations.
Yeah, great. And that to me sounds like a game changer, because now we're no longer just investing in projects based on the expected performance. We are fine-tuning it and kind of incentivizing them to keep getting better and better as time goes.
Exactly, and it's not enough to do just a few good things. You have to really address the bad things in your own portfolio as a firm as well.
Fantastic, thanks. And moving to Rakesh. So Rakesh, UNEP obviously also has been investing in efficiency, in sustainability, and specifically in cooling. So if you could very briefly talk about what UNEP is doing in India on the cooling and building side, and then talk about the fact that neither IFC, World Bank, UNEP, we cannot do all the investment that's needed. There has to be local investments as well. So what role are the local banks, the big banks in India playing? Are they interested in investing in energy efficiency, in sustainability, in low carbon development?
Sure. So UNEP has the largest program on cooling called the India Cooling Program, which is financed by the Swiss Development Agency for Cooperation, SDC. As a part of it, we are focusing more on passive cooling systems for the affordable housing sector. And the idea is to talk to relevant stakeholders and see how best we can make some projects happen on ground. So now this involves talking to two state governments, that is, we're focusing on Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, and trying to address what are the challenges. First, try to understand what are the challenges and come out with how we can address these. So, and we've just started this year, so it's early days. The conversations that we are having, we can see that in some places there are poor building codes, some places the building codes are not implemented correctly, so there's that gap. There's a lack of finance for sure, so there's a specific output on finance, and then there's a lot of lack of capacity as well at almost all stakeholder levels, right? So our program will try to address this and deep dive into Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu specifically. And coming to the financial part, so you're right, banks in India need to have this, need to have this focus to get to this point. So we've started talking to a lot of the big Indian banks, and what we've already realizing is they're not looking at a green building as a better asset. They don't right now have the risk assessment separately for a green building. They're just looking at it as a business as usual asset. And this is why there's no concessionality available. They do not realize that this asset is going to perform better. So it's just a business as usual asset. If you tell them you have green certification, they'll just say, yeah, great, good to have. But I still need to see your balance sheet, how good it is. Still need to see that you've done projects like this in the past and you've been successful, so on and so forth. So we want to try and understand first how this can change and probably provide some solutions in the long run, and we'll need help from IFC and many other stakeholders. So that's sort of the plan.
Thanks. And I think you're right. There are very few banks looking at this. Like a few examples that we have also not really succeeded as much as they should have. Like the SBI fund that was available for efficient homes. For several reasons, possibly one of them is technical reason and maybe lack of proper awareness. They say they have very few takers, and there's a possibility they'll probably return the funds to the donor. That would be a pity. One follow-up question for you, Rakesh, on your financing. What I found really interesting is that UNEP is financing passive cooling, which I think is unique, because when we look at cooling investments in India, they're mostly talking about active innovations, which is also needed, highly efficient equipment. But you're looking at it from a different perspective and saying, let's reduce the demand first, demand for these mechanical. So if you could briefly talk about the passive cooling investment program that you have.
Sure. So our entire program will be focused mainly on passive cooling strategies. I think the idea behind it is, talking about extreme heat, the population that's going to be affected the most are the poor and the disadvantaged. And these are the people who typically look at affordable housing as their first house, right? So, and what we notice is passive cooling strategies, because if you implement them right at the design stage, they can be very cost efficient. And in the long run also, they'll save you a lot of money because your demand itself has reduced. And at the same time, you are going to help India achieve its net zero ambitions as well, because you're going to burn through less electricity to power your houses, to heat your houses, to cool your houses, let's say. So that's sort of the main idea behind this, that we want to reach. We want to probably tackle one of the hardest sectors to reach, which is the affordable housing one, and try and make that happen. I think if that goes through, I think the rest of the market will take care of itself.
So how much funds are available for this program, and have any been dispersed yet?
No, honestly, we don't have any funds. The way we are looking to do this is we are going to tap into the state government's funds. We already have had one discussion with the state government of Tamil Nadu, and they seem keen. The idea is to tell them what design, what structure, financial structure to look forward to. And I think in the last 3 days that we've been talking to IFC, we seem to have a lot that can work together in this direction. And then ask them, use their money to deploy. And again, the idea is to use small amounts of funding to mobilize larger capital from the commercial players, that's the Indian banks. So that's how we are looking at it.
Fantastic. I think that's really needed. I'll ask my colleague Ekta to come in now. And Ekta, you come from a very strong banking background, and now you're working in the green housing sector. So if you could share from your understanding of the banking industry, what can be done to make them more interested in green finance, in green buildings, in cooling?
Very interestingly, a couple of years, 2-3 years back, when we actively started speaking to the financial institutions on the climate finance space, specifically focused on green buildings, energy efficiency, green housing. The first part was to convince them to hear what all this is about, right? So before they come to the finance stage, first to make them understand this concept exists and make them come to the table to hear about it. Once thankfully over the last few years, couple of years, the regulator has played a very important role here, and RBI came up with a draft paper on the framework of climate finance, climate risk. SEBI came up with the regulation that all the listed companies need to have a published sustainability report. And with all that, this gave some kind of focus, at least at the management level, in the banking fraternity, in the financial institutions that started building up. And the work that Green Buildings team, Edge team has done, focused not only on the developer segment, but the self-built housing that Rusmer was talking about. So all that combined, it has actually evinced, now it has become a topic of at least interest, where people are asking what is it all about. They are ready to hear how to do it. So that has been, I think, the biggest step forward. And once they start hearing about it, the interest to get into this space is building up. We are hearing more from the leading private sector banks, from the public sector banks, and it's not only about the green building or the housing aspect, but also on the other aspects of green financing. For instance, the MSME segment, where the energy efficient portfolio to be built up. Very interestingly, there is no capacity, there is no technical know-how that exists. That's what the banks have started accepting, that, okay, we need institutions like IFC to come forward and give us that kind of technical know-how. Do these capacity building sessions with us, do a deep dive in our portfolio. And few financial institutions, when we did this deep dive into their MSME portfolio, it was like they themselves were surprised that there already exists, they've done the green financing. That's the green, it could be easily tagged as green, but they never knew what comprises of that. So combining everything with the BEE positive list, there's a lot of work that IFC has done. We've looking at the requirement that the banking institution, the financial institutions have. We've worked with the IIBF, that is Indian Institute of Banking Federation, and we designed an entire capacity building training modules for the bankers, and we've got, I think, more than 2,500 banking fraternity people trained in those modules. Certificate have been given to them. So all that, the efforts that have gone, in last 2 years have helped at least this awareness built. I'm in the last session also, last panel discussion, awareness was the buzzword in that panel. I think we've been hearing this since yesterday. So the key word here is we just need to build awareness, and there's a lot of fragmented information that is available. There is some information that is available with the bankers, some with the industry players, all these participants, all of you here, everybody in their own. I think it's a very, very silo world that we are operating in.
Sure.
And if we come together, that's where the difference can be made.
Thanks. One last question for you, Ekta, and then we'll try to wrap up the session. We know that the bulk of the growth in construction in India is going to happen in small towns and in small buildings, mostly residential. What can be done to push this sector, nudge this sector towards decarbonization?
Atif, I think some of our audience here may not have this number, but 62% of the new affordable housing finance that is done in India comes in the self-built segment. That's the large opportunity and that's the market size that we're talking about. So, and this is all in the tier 3, tier 4 peripherals of tier 2 cities that we are speaking. And I would say it's actually 3 A's here. One, most important, awareness. The second is the availability. Third is the affordability. I think these are the 3 important critical elements to it. Awareness, I need not speak much. It is most required for everybody, entire value chain. Now, availability, affordability, it's a chicken and an egg story here. Demand and supply, who comes first? But I think once the awareness starts developing and financial institutions, all our material suppliers, everybody, the builders, the contractors, everybody needs to play a role here. And that's where this availability issue and then the affordability when it comes to these affordable segment, a slight differential of, when we talk of say 5-star rated fans, and there is a difference of around 1200, 1500 per fan. That itself is an expensive affair for this segment of customer that we are talking about. So if we put together all these 3, I know it's not an overnight job, but at least some steps have to be taken to address this, and then that's what's we move towards decarbonization.
In 30 seconds, could you explain what IFC has already been doing in this segment?
Yes.
30 seconds, please.
Sure. So we've provided, we're working with a lot of financial institutions, typically the affordable housing finance companies, and we're providing the technical assistance, we are providing the financial assistance to these affordable housing finance companies to lend ahead for the green housing, especially on the individual housing front. And through our technical experts, we are providing all the resources, all the tools that could be available, teaching them how to do it. Intense process throughout, but yes, and as of now, I think we've already tested the pilot. We've got around 200 individual homes certified. So it's already a tested model. And we're working with 6 institutions as of now, and now we're looking at scaling up this model across the country.
Wonderful, thank you. You want to add something quickly?
I have a note, as Ekta was talking about the term awareness. What awareness are we trying to do? It is that along the entire value chain, you can do good by the planet and you can do good by your bottom line. The upfront costs are not as high. Programs like passive cooling can help you design a building that really lowers that. Any investment that you put into this work will come back to you because the utility bills will go down. We met a wonderful client today, Design to Occupancy. They're building a building that will be fully powered with solar at cost with their neighbor next door. So they will have no utility cost, but they're building a building that has all these bells and whistles. A little bit of research went a long way. Banks can do this, they can make money because it's a better product for them. Suppliers can do better. So I think the awareness that we're trying to do is, if you just stop and change your thinking and don't go on an autopilot, you actually can do good by the planet, you can do good by your customers, and you can do good for your pocket. That's the awareness we're trying to bring.
Wonderful. So one last question, whoever wants to respond, and all of you can respond. There is one key takeaway with regards to green building or green cooling, low carbon cooling finance that you want the audience to take away, what would that be in one sentence, if there's anything that you can highlight?
First important step toward the green financing is the integration between the finance department and the technical department is very much important. These 2 departments should talk to each other. If these 2 departments are not in sync with each other, then green financing won't be making any sense. The second step is benchmarking. The data benchmarking will be a crucial step towards any sort of green financing.
Wonderful, thanks. Anurag?
So in terms of, let's say, the passive design feature based financing is really, really important aspect, as we have heard from Rakesh. I think we need to look at the specific definitive bundling of those features, because there's a lot of, maybe I think, subjectivity involved in this case also. And then if it gets done with that aspect, I think that will be a wonderful scenarios as well. In terms of MSME, certainly Ekta ji has mentioned very beautifully. I think this is something which is very, very much like the need of the hour. A lot of, maybe I think, the cooling specific component, they are getting manufactured by these MSMEs across India, because they are the backbone of the industry. We really need to look at how we can arrange the finance for there in terms of the technology upgradation. Most of the cases, the finance available from the financial institutions, it is nothing but the mortgage-based financing. And that is where they face a lot of challenges as well, in terms of a lot of innovative models which could be developed along with a lot of ecosystems stakeholders. For example, distribution companies, they also have a lot of role to play, because they also need to look at their peak load management. And within the zone of the distribution companies, all the stakeholders, be it the MSME companies, residential, commercial, all the, maybe I think the specific players, they work together with the distribution companies as well, because the electricity is something that we are talking about in terms of the decarbonization. So we need to look at the model holistically. I think that is my submission.
Thanks. Mr. Modgill?
See, if we take into this, dip into this, there are various aspects of this. If we have to start from the lower level, maybe the appliances which consume maximum energy, fans, ceiling fans, which are the most utilized ones, as well as if we look into the statistics, probably those are consuming the maximum energy in India kind of situation. Because every house has got 10, 20 of those. Anybody who can't afford anything for cooling, he will go for fan at least. Now, what is the option available there? Yes, efficient fans are available. Those are a bit expensive. But how to make that available to the general consumer who is consuming maximum? The person who knows about efficiency, he can afford it, and they are taking this BLDC fans. Government tried in metros, few state electricity institutions, they came out with bulk purchase and supplying these kind of instruments at a lower price. But where it is consumed maximum, what is our effort there? That is what we need to devise, certain kind of financing incentives or schemes where we can popularize those and can make a big difference. On the similar lines, if we look into the residential sector, which is going to be again going for cooling, we need to look into passive, of course, as a very good exercise, but we can't stop at passive alone, because passive alone cannot bring actual thermal comfort, which everybody will be looking for. So once we exhaust the passive measures, we have to go further to the certain active measures as well. So there, what actually we need is that we should incentivize those, look into those kinds of schemes where that reach to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities can reach. Because tier 1 cities, yes, some awareness is there and that is happening. But we need to look into various other, because even if we talk about it, this can go endlessly, but there are various other things and schemes which financial institutions as well as certain kind of policy framework, if can work together, can yield certain dividends and results in a better manner.
Thanks. So more financing mechanisms and policies to support end user support, adoption of these practices. Wonderful. So I think we'll wrap it up here. We can take a couple of questions. So while people are preparing the questions, maybe I'll give a very quick summary of the key points I've picked up from the discussion. One is focusing not just on the design efficiency, but also on the operational efficiency. That's an aspect that we often ignore, especially coming from a design profession, engineering, architecture, etc. We just focus on designing something, but not as much on the operational side. Data validation, I think Anubhav really highlighted that point. Innovative financing like SLF, involving public finance along with private sector finance like Rakesh mentioned. Financing mechanisms for end-use technologies, simple things like fans and evaporative coolers, etc. Looking at more of those. Developing the capacity and know-how of our financial institutions, local financial institutions, so they can take over and drive this movement forward. And lastly, bringing the technical and the finance departments together when talking about climate finance and building finance. So excellent points raised here. Anybody from the audience who wants to ask a question or respond to anything that was said here?
I think, yeah. Can you give a mic to the gentleman?
Hi, I'm Neeraj. Just an observation, not really, and this has been very enlightening discussion. I'll give you an example of low-cost finance. Finance, if you're looking as an investment tool for the financing body to earn something out of it, is that the intent? I'm just asking a simple question. If you see, a lot of finance is actually happening at the household level. Many of us Indians have people working for us at our homes. One of our people working at home, she built a home. She wanted to finance a fridge. So, zero interest loan is what we gave her. So, you buy us a fridge. Me and my wife went out, bought the fridge. After 6 months, the payment of the fridge was done. But I'm just loud thinking and asking whether this is something, zero interest loans is something that you might want to be looking at seriously, or because this is actually happening. Maybe for a fan, because when we say she's built this house on the topmost floor where it's almost like a radiator, with an asbestos sheet.
Right.
Fan is going to be, just putting down that hot.
Yeah, let's take a response. Maybe Ekta or Rakesh, if you want to.
I mean, there are examples of this in the West as well. I myself bought a TV in Paris, which I could pay over 4 months, 4 installments, but it was zero interest. Okay, I have no clue how the bank, they were okay with it. But there are examples of this, and again, you could start off like this to push the market in that direction. But again, it also depends on if a bank really wants to do it, it will have to do it with the help of some grant funding coming from somewhere. So yeah, so it sort of takes a blended finance approach, which I think Rusmir had mentioned earlier, and I think we would call it a risk mitigation sort of a facility, where you try to push the market for the first, say, 2-3 years. You have such a facility, but a bank on its own taking this, I see it challenging in India, at least for now. I may be wrong, but I'll be happy to be proven wrong in that case.
Okay, I think we'll have to close the session. Okay, very briefly, ma'am, and very brief response.
Okay. Hi, sir. This is Dr. Priyanka from Vayu, and we are into green sustainable solutions. My suggestion, or in fact a question towards it, was in the morning sessions we heard that mostly green products and zero carbon products are very expensive in terms of capex, and over the period of time the operational cost goes down because they are energy efficient. Is there any product in financing world which can take that cost of capital and then maybe recover from the operational cost in the period? Because that will actually motivate people have green products in their industries.
See, I would like to correct you here. It's a myth. If you take individually one single product, yes, what you're saying is right. But you put in a building, I will give you an example. If suppose you are doing a building with split air conditionings, right? You may be getting that 25,000 rupees a ton. But if you look at that building will have distribution of 11 to 12 kilowatt to each flat. That distribution cost is there, electricity, which you are not counting. Now that will, if you have a centralized cooling, then you are not paying for that. You have a centralized transformer, and your requirement for the load will be 2 kilowatt to 2.5 kilowatt as against 12 kilowatt. So that distribution entire is gone. Then you are putting that at central plant, which has got diversity. If you are having 5 air conditioners in your house, you are only using at a time 2. And if you have 20 or 200 flats in your colony or in your building, only 60% will be utilizing air conditioning at any given time. So if you look into that diversity, which is getting offset onto the electrical side as well as onto the air conditioning side, it will cost you less. But if you compare 1 ton of air conditioning central with 1 ton of air conditioning split, yes, you are 100% right. So we have to take a holistic approach instead of taking an individualistic approach for a single this thing. The most difficult thing which we need to cover is that we are still working in watertight compartments, vertical compartments. Yeah. So we need to expand our horizon and then come out with solutions.
I'll give you a quick answer, sorry, and then you can read up. So D2O brought us to their offices. It is a net zero facility at cost with their neighbor, right? They put solar on top, which is maybe more costly, but they save money elsewhere. And so their total cost of their building is as if they just build a brown building, but they will have no utility bills, nothing, no electricity bill. So that's one technical answer. The other one is where there is that upfront cost, what IFC tries to do is the concept of patient capital. Don't give a 2-year loan, give a 10-year loan, give a 15-year loan. Give banks that loan so that they can stay with you longer. And that's really what we're trying to do. We can't always compete on the interest rate because everyone does need to make the return, but what we can do is stay with you for a longer period of time and then let you pay off all of that in due course.
I think we've all learned that awareness is key, so when awareness is there, you will understand that how to differentiate this and look into the cost angle. So that's one key takeaway from this panel. There is many, as Atif has already explained to us, but I see a very interesting journey ahead because the Indian banks are showing interest, and today I can see that IFC with its effort, constant effort, has achieved to generate interest in them. They're coming forward and looking forward to, so I see, people like us who are into business, who look forward to kind of getting investment into this sector, will probably see a better tomorrow today. So with that, I would like to end this session because we are really running out of time. I started this, that I'm going to give the time. So thank you very much.
Probably the only one that we finished within time limits. This is the only panel that we have finished within time limits. So good job done by the moderator, sir, and session chair, sir. I'll request you for a photograph, please. All the panelists, the session chair and moderator, sir, please come forward for a photograph.
And profiles serve as the foundation for a large application and potential innovations. Here we introduce you to the world of high-quality copper and copper alloy products.